meeting. I'm sorry for being late. 2 printers and both broke at the same time. You notice that you all have gotten a new first issue of the Messenger, the CV Messenger newspaper, which, with the help of Neil, we got it out in record time, and as you can see, shine a light on the news. This is just the first issue. We're going to have continuous issues. For those of you who may not know, at one point in my checkered career, I owned part of 3 Long Island newspapers, one of which was the oldest continuous published newspaper in Long Island. It was called The Messenger. Actually, it was the Smithtown Messenger. This is here so that there could be another vehicle to counter the obvious bias Yugo reporter. I can tell you this, if any of you went online and saw what's online as the Yugo reporter, which you didn't get, we've rose another notch on page 6, and page 6 is usually for something else. Everybody knows generally what page 6 was. There was a description of what went on at the advisory committee meeting. Unfortunately, how many of you were there? Okay, let me say this. I actually have a disc which we'll show next time. I'd like to know how many of you have seen the Yugo version of the advisory committee. I can't find it. Usually it's on his blog. I'm told it's somewhere. And there's a good reason you didn't see it. Because during when I was speaking, Howard O'Brien decided to put a movie on. Subsequent to that, Mr. David Israel, as some of you may know, decided to speak. First he gestured, and they very nicely said, Mr. Israel, your gesture's out of line. It's distracting. Within a minute, he changed from gestures. He started to talk. I said, Mr. Israel, you're out of order. Please don't talk. Another minute, he decided to talk again. This time I very nicely said, Mr. Israel, if you continue to talk one more time, I'll call the guards and have you removed from this room.
He did say that.
I remember you saying it.
And he was very quiet after that. And I guess the reason you're not seeing the video, besides the nonsense that went on, is the gentleman who always calls for order was disorderly, and our treasurer was beyond the pale to put a video on behind any speaker when they're speaking is very, very, I'll use a nice word, common. The next thing I want to just briefly comment on, how many of you have gotten the Newsday section, the business section, and saw what's going on at our nearby neighbor, the Whitehall condominium? Could you raise your hands, those who've seen it? Very few. Let me tell you what went on there very briefly. There are several people in Whitehall, several, who were very despondent and concerned about how their money was being handled. And you could see the article on Gary's blog. So, many of the owners made a complaint to the Department of Business. Now, unfortunately for us, Yugo is on 617, they're on 718. Their complaint caused the department to come in and perform an audit. The immediate response, and I spoke to them yesterday, which the newspaper doesn't tell you, was they were fined $5,000. But unlike what's not clear in the newspaper is the audit is still proceeding. The $5,000 was just because they never filed their annual tax return. I believe from what I was told, I'm not sure, that they have the same auditors that we do. The next thing is, 2 disgruntled unit holders filed a lawsuit in October against the president and the association.
Whitehall?
Whitehall. And I went online and I saw the docket. The newspaper article says, to date, from October 17th, in order to defend the then president, Mr. Rossi, the association paid $130,000. In addition to that, the department removed all the powers of Mr. Rossi, the then president. He had no power whatsoever. Now, I think we're much better behaved because the unit holders who were not happy went one step further. They broke into the association's office, changed the locks, because they felt they didn't want their information destroyed. So I guess they're somewhat unhappy. The police came, they did nothing. Actually, they helped them change the locks. Maybe we should have the police in here. Okay, let's get down. I want anybody, we have been able to put this together, and I want to make an editorial correction that was just brought to my attention by Dorothy Tetro, that the first article on the inside was not her work. So, Gary?
Still talking the books,
Yeah. Yes. We didn't do that intentionally. We have a very limited staff. Anybody who wants to be a proofreader, leave your name. Anybody who wants to contribute articles. We're not going to be like the Yugo reporter. Leave your name. Contact us. We are looking for additional articles that are fresh and topical. And we'll accept all articles with very few exceptions. And if it's something that is against us, we don't mind printing it as long as it's substantiated. There's no limit. There's no 100 people limit. We need help. Anybody who wants to help us, leave your name. We could use the help. One of the main topics that we're here to cover today is the budget. Now, on my circular, I said to you, I'm going to present to you a corrected budget. And the answer is, I've only gotten through a very small part, which I have here. I have gotten in the past one of the budgets that Howard had prepared. And it gave me the opportunity to go line by line by line by line by line. How many of you have the budget, the revised budget that Howard prepared and gave out at the advisory committee meeting? Anybody? Good. I didn't have the time to reprint it all, and I only got through 1 or 2 sections. We could show the whole, we have photographed the whole meeting. Neil did it for us. Now, one of the things I want to bring out, if you read the Yugo Reporter when it comes out, it says the advisory committee passed the budget as presented. I think that's very hard, because there were several people who actually got on the floor. Yes. Finance, I'm sorry.
The finance committee.
The Finance Committee. And I'm just looking around to see, Myron and I gave a special invitation to 2 members of the Finance Committee who voted for the budget. We spoke to them afterwards. And we questioned them, why did you vote for this budget? Do you have a background? Do you know what you're looking at? Do you know this is the case, that's the case, this is the case? And one of them said, when's your meeting? And we gave him the meeting. He said, when I go to the next meeting, I'm going to say I made a mistake, and this is why. He said he'd come to this meeting, he must have lost it. He hasn't come as yet as I look around the room. Well, let's talk about that just about every item on that budget is overstated. I have a limited amount, but some of the significant items that was brought up, besides the roadway and the reserves. Let's take, and I have a lot of small ones, but let's take one of the big ones. For the first time to my knowledge, the income from the investigations is eliminated. Only the expenses are there. Now, I have the budget that was prepared earlier, but I really didn't need it. What I did is, when you get the UCO reporter, you know in the reporter it has the amount of sales, the amount of rentals, the amount of this, the amount of that. Well, to the best of my knowledge, that's $100 a pop. We had about 1,500 investigations, probably more, because I only counted 1 per investigation per apartment. I'm sure a lot have 2. I then took 1/3 of that because I can't conceive that they're paying more than $30 for a financial report. Probably paying less. I have the right to get that information because we ourselves, how much do we pay, Gary?
25, 35.
35 bucks. So I took 1/3 of that, which came to about 40 bucks. And there is, without a shadow of a doubt, $87,000 left off the budget. Now be aware that every dollar equals 100,000. In the short rewrite that I did, I think I have 200,000 in changes, including that 86,000, in various categories, no further than the 3rd category that's listed. The budget, beyond the shadow of a doubt, is $8 to $10 overstated. The 241 that we got is way out of line. In a short period of time, I intended to prepare the whole thing and give you copies. But I gotta tell you that it's really a sad thing that if you went down the list, just about every item was increased. Now, some of them are very apparent. Where we pay for fuel. We pay for fuel for the buses, we pay for fuel for the rovers. I would say fuel costs have gone down at least 1/3. It's $1 or more. And we have on that budget increases in fuel costs. I'm fishing around for what I have, and I can actually give you the numbers. It's unfortunate that you didn't bring, this is what he handed out. No one brought that with them except George. You brought it. Okay. There are, if you have this, you'll see, there's another $100,000. That's $1. On the original budget, which I have, there was no expense for roadway repairs. When I got up and I said, Howard, how come you have no expense for roadway repairs? His answer was, if we have repairs, I'm going to take it out of the reserves. That's what he said. It's recorded. I said, are you sure? He said, sure. In the meantime, and I'll get into the impropriety of it, he put $100,000 in, that's $1. He put $700,000 into the reserves, that's $7. Okay? I love the fact, quite frankly, that they came up with $15 million. We gave that information directly to our attorneys, and the implication is the $5 million we're trying to recover may be a bit short, because we just paid $5 million. They say it's going to take $15 million, so we're looking to be paid 4 times. When questioned, where did that number come from? It came from the sky. Did you have an engineer? No. We went to the internet, and you could do the calculation. We have to turn this budget down again. And I think it's very fortunate that you won't be able to vote on it until March. Now that's interesting. It may not be at the March Delegate Assembly, because I believe it has to take 30 days after the budget is printed and distributed in the UCO Reporter. You have the UCO Reporter that came out that says February?
Yes,
Come out today.
right here.
You got it today?
Yes.
Okay, today is the 27th. They have until the 30th, 30 days from the 27th, to have a special budget meeting, which I do feel he's going to call, and I think we have to resist it. The next step is, I think tomorrow, there's an officers meeting. I think as many of you who are here should go, because if you look in that reporter on page 6, there's an article about the meeting. And in it says, first of all, I don't agree with the numbers. When we did the count, there was more than 12 different. Second of all, it said, obviously, most of the people who attended were from the Messenger Club. Isn't that wonderful? That means they had no one else to blame. That means we're making an impact. I didn't see 100 people raise their hand. I think there was only 26 people there. But the thing is, there is a time to stand up and be counted. We will have a revised budget. And the problem I see here is that many of these items, to really do a budget, you have to have the documentation. Now, I requested numerous times copies of contracts, bills, and I get funny answers back. I had intended to bring a bunch of standard applications to get copies of numbers from UCO. And then within the next 20 days, we should submit as many of these as possible. Because when you look at this, some of these numbers are beyond a doubt incorrect. If you wait 1 second, because I have to look at this. And the first group of accounts, if anybody remembers, is the laundry. Now, it has been brought up before that the laundry has been a loser. And at the 2013 meeting, there was a whole question as to a nickel being added, and they were going to wait and see. Well, they didn't wait and see, and they bought how many? 8 new machines. Now, Dorothy knows at one point when they were going to close it, I said, Dorothy, maybe I would buy it. I looked at it, I looked at the numbers, and I said, sure, I'll take it over. But I don't want to lose all that money. I think it could be run better. The question is, when you go down the laundry account, one of the items are there on the laundry account was the replacement of equipment. Now, we have 8 new machines and 8 new dryers. What are we going to replace? Actually, that's an acquisition of more equipment for a loser. I think that was brought up. Utilities went up, water went up. How could it go up when the revenues are down? Electric went up. Well, I don't have to see the bills to know that if you buy new equipment and it's decent, most of these machines are more energy efficient than the old machines. So therefore, the electricity should go down, even if the usage is the same. What they have done is broad brush every single expense, and in just 3 accounts, I told, 3 sections, we have $200,000 that's been overstated. The 86 I talked to you about, the total in the security is overstated by $118,000. The total in all the items for the laundry is $13,000. The total for transportation is overstated. Why? First of all, when you compare the actual expense in 2014, not the budget amount, but the actual expense to the budget, there is a difference. And actually, just about every item has gone up.
On the security and transportation, they siphon almost a quarter to the general. Is that why it's in the minus here? And on the right-hand side, it says the practical increase is minus 33 or whatever. Wait, hold on a second. Minus 4.93 on transportation. Is it because they siphon some of the money?
No, because you have to compare a budget, not against the budget that was in the past, but the actual. And when you compare the budget to the actual, there is your difference. If you're talking about, what are you talking about?
Transportation contract is almost 5% decrease, actually.
The transportation contract, according to the 2014 actual, was $1,062,000. The transportation budget is $1,100,000. Okay?
Yeah.
So it is not a decrease, it's an increase.
Yeah, but when they say minus of increase, it's supposed decrease. Because what they did, they took a third quarter and they siphoned this out.
No, wait. This is, if you read his budget, it's a 12-month budget. 12-month.
How do we get a copy of that?
How do you get a copy of what?
What you're holding in your hand, the budget.
The budget was given out at the Finance Committee meeting.
Some of us didn't go.
Now, I haven't seen, unless they put it into the paper, and I'm not sure what they put in there is the same thing that we were distributing, because I'm bringing to light, I have what they distributed, I haven't seen that. There were changes that were supposed to be made. And that's why I take exception to the article, if you look at the article, which says The budget was accepted as you have it. While you're sitting there, you could take a copy of this, honey, and look at what we got to see if things would change. I think it's important not to be contrary, and I think it's important, while we made the recommendation at the last meeting and over 50 unit holders signed it, that 3 people should go in and take a look, and it was dismissed. If you look at his article on his blog, he says UCO doesn't take threats. Now, Honey read it, there is no threat. The only threat is perceived by someone who really feels he has something to hide. Now, it appears that the agency that came in to help the Whitehall, and I said I spoke to him yesterday, has no authority to help us because the 617. So you know the expression, God helps those who help themselves. And we have to help ourselves. We're not talking nickels and dimes, we're talking dollars. And equally as important, and I may be repetitive, which I told I am, is that if you vote for that budget, you're obligating each and every one of you for a minimum of a $10 increase plus everything else for the next 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, now I'm looking at the irrigation here.
Right.
Okay. Last year it was 136,000.
Right.
This year it's 100,000, which means a decrease of almost a quarter. Now, in my budget of my association, they took from the irrigation a quarter and they reduced it and they put it in the general. And
On the
this
budget.
was my question all the time, if you remember,
Right.
why they siphon money from designated accounts into the general.
Okay, the answer to that is very simple. The simple is that when I came to the last meeting, I handed out to everyone here the balance sheet on the prepared audited report for 2013. And I circled the $680,000. Those of you who were here at the last meeting should have gotten that. Now, as I said before, that $680,000, which Howard is taking into 2015, was already accounted for in 2013. And as George Lowenstein said, you know, that's not the right treatment for tax purposes. When you read the tax law, you have 2 options. One of which is to roll it into the next year, and the other is to reduce the budget for the next year. It almost sounds the same. In the past, this piece of paper says they utilized it by allocating to certain accounts in 2013. If you go back over Goldman's reports, it's been done every single year. It is a play on figures. The problem is here, what can we do? Well, you know, Dot Lowenstein got up at a prior meeting and she said, you know, the fellas at the security are really getting hurt and we should do a little bit of a march around the UCO building. Well, a few of us showed up. And believe it or not, just with those few, these fellas started to get a little bit of a break in the action. Now it's cold, not as cold as New York, we're missing snow. But I think if we, amongst other things, if we had a good showing to protest around the UCO building, it will get exposure and maybe we'll get some attention from those people who, when they move from being a unit holder to being, in French they call it a macher, a big shot, they've lost sight of who is really in charge. They're no longer unit owners. They know better than we. On that finance committee, is that it? I'd like to see the background of everybody on that finance committee as to what background they have in finance.
Well, they're elected,
They weren't elected, they were appointed.
okay? They're still appointed.
Well, that doesn't make it right. As you see,
Say that.
as you see, you can have 1 million volunteers and with a good heart, but they're not really qualified. And they refuse to let qualified people in.
Why?
Have you been going to the meetings?
Yeah, but why they, all right, let's assume what you're saying is true.
Okay.
Why are they doing it?
If what I'm saying is true, the answer is obvious. What's the answer? If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it must be a duck. If there's nothing to hide, why would they turn down help? Now, you know, every one of us can write to Yuko, all right, and get to see the records or demand it. Olga would like to talk. Olga, you can take over the rest of the...
No. You're doing a great job, Ed. I just want to answer this gentleman's question. It's the responsibility of the president to appoint people on the committee who are qualified. I believe it's also the responsibility of the president to appoint the head of that committee. Is that true, Dorothy? So therefore, if you ask why, it is because David Israel has chosen to appoint people who are not qualified. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, but why?
I just answered your
Can
question.
control them better.
It is the responsibility of the president to appoint people who
So
are
what is his
qualified.
motive?
His motive is to appoint people who don't know so that he can do what he wants. That's his motive. I hope that answers your
Well, it
question.
sounds right, because
Thank
the
you.
term limits thing. So I'm not arguing his side.
No,
Please
so
don't-
I wanted to answer your question to make it clear, okay?
Any further questions, ask Olga, please.
I got something I'd like
I've
to
been
say about that, Ed.
accused of talking too much, so I'm willing to stop talking, and anybody here can take over the mic. How about you, Eileen?
You know enough. I don't know enough finances to take
The
over.
thing I'd like to say, by the way, my name is Neil. The thing I'd like to say about the volunteers and the people working in the UCO is it's a perfect example of what is known as cronyism. Cronyism is, you'll see that in corrupt organizations and governments, where the government or the leaders surround themselves with people that are basically yes men. But it's usually a cover for, or in a lot of cases, it's a cover for corrupt activities. The cronies are all on board, they're all yes men. So cronies basically lead to what you call a regime, and the regime can eventually turn into a dynasty. So if you see cronyism like that, to my regards, it should be stamped out. I'm doing a little video that deals with this thing, and you might be able to see it on the blog spot in another week or so, but I think you'll find it very interesting. Okay, thank you.
Can I have the microphone? I have a question.
Certainly. Here's your own microphone.
Oh, my God.
You get to keep this microphone.
I finally got my own microphone. Isn't that wonderful? I just want to bring something up that's been brought to my attention, and there's somebody sitting in the audience was one of the people that brought it to my attention. I hang out mostly at the Camden Pool. I got a lot of friends there, I hope. And a lot of them have been asking me the same question over and over. The $400,000, approximate $400,000, that was taken from the Wi-Fi and put into a reserve fund. Most of the people want to know why that money is not returned to the residents, because they've been paying for the Wi-Fi, I don't know, it's 4 years?
Two.
Only 2 years, that's
Yeah.
all?
$2 is $188.
So it's $12, it's $24 to each resident, actually. Why does he want it in the reserve fund? Well, my opinion is he's starting again, looking to do something with Wi-Fi, broadband, call it whatever you want. And I think that maybe one of the things that we should do at the next delegate assembly is bring that up. Somebody has to make a motion to take that money out of the reserve fund, have a vote, and have it returned to the residents. So he can't use that money for anything except giving it back to the residents. That's a wonderful idea that was told to me by a lot of people hanging around and really anxious to do the right thing for the people that live here.
Anybody else would like to comment on that?
No, that's a very good idea.
Flora?
Give Flora a mic. In all these categories. It's okay, you're thinking of, in all these categories.
People in the back can't
Stand up, Flora, so we can see you.
In all these categories that he's raising up the budget, my question is, which is part of this, what he wants to do with it. He definitely wants to have money there available to use to what he wrote now, Wi-Fi, broadband, just what Myron said. To be aware that the increase in all these categories is probably going to go there. And if he has all these people giving him in these committees everything he wants, that's where your money is going to go. And you know what? The people at the pool, please ask them to come to the meeting and stand up and be counted. All right? So that's what they have to do if they have the question. I tell everybody that I can. Come to the meeting and be counted.
Laura. Okay, Gene Dowling made a motion to put that money into reserve, okay? He did not put it in himself. It was a result of a motion that was passed by the delegate assembly. Okay, so I'm just bringing out the facts. I am not pro or con in my statement, but it's a factual thing that it was done by a motion that was voted on by the delegate assembly.
Okay, I had also the same.
Shown as a separate item.
On this thing, it says here, cash surplus, return to owners 400,000. So maybe they mean to return it.
Let me tell you something. There are various ways to return it. One is the good old-fashioned way, cash.
Yeah.
Okay. That 400,000 is not the same 400,000 we're talking about.
Ah, okay.
That 400,000 is indicative of what we've been saying. 2014, before the audit report comes out, shows a surplus. Okay? That means the budget was too much.
Yes.
Now we have a 2015 budget that's compared to the 2014 budget that's greater than the 2014, so that will again bring a surplus. The answer is when you beef up a budget and you don't use the accounting that was used before, and by the way, in the past there was a vote not to change the accounting, and Howard's explanation was, I said, how could you change it? He says, I don't see it in the bylaws, so I could change it. What you have is, I think, possibly a deficiency or a lack of understanding from our auditors as to the displeasure of the people here as to the change. Whether that's a significant change in accounting. Now, not from an auditor standpoint, but from a practical standpoint, when I was an officer in a large public company, when a change like that to the accounting system is made, that had to go to the directors. And who are the directors? We're supposed to be the directors. The delegates. What we have here, if those of you who've seen the picture, The Mouse That Roared, we have the inmates running the asylum. John, come to the front.
My name is John Gluzak, Salisbury H. I want to thank Mr. Grossman for his tireless efforts. That's number one. We're a messenger club. We should be the messengers. We ought to contact people, talk to them, what's this all about? Second, you gotta go after this reporter. There's 3 letters every month in there, and I'm sure more than 3 people write to them. All right? Barbara Cornish got it for the second month, where $700 went for vacations or bonuses. All right? Why do they screen these letters? It's our paper. Messenger's part of our paper. But this UCO paper is our paper. We order everybody in here, write a letter this month and see how many get published. All right?
Ed, I'm back, over here, Ed. Over here, Ed. Oh, hold on. Before you,
Ed.
Mr. Jerry
I
Satuski.
just want to mention something to George. George, in answer to what you said before about Gene Dowling, I think, I can't be 100% sure, Gene Dowling was interested in getting that money away from the Treasury, putting it into reserves, so he couldn't use it for anything else. I don't think she had anything else in mind.
Absolutely.
That's my opinion.
I never insinuated anything
No,
beyond the fact that the motion was made.
I know, but I'm just giving you my opinion of why she did it. Okay? And I think it would be a wonderful idea if somebody got up and made a motion to take that $400,000, give it back to the residents. Now, you're not going to get cash back. You know how you're going to get it? The last time we won the lawsuit, you got your money back through your association. The money would be delivered to your association in some form, and each resident would get that money. Meanwhile, that $400,000 would disappear from Dave's treasury, which I'm sure he has plans for.
Myron, we in the past, and I haven't been a resident here that long, have never experienced, in my knowledge, the same kind of shenanigans that are going on now.
Never.
Okay, so what we're trying to do is use a Band-Aid to correct the problem.
No, I want a big bandage. I don't want a Band-Aid.
So Myron, excuse me, I have to correct you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Money has been returned to the residents more than once. The first big return came from the doorway fee from Comcast. And the way in which it was returned to the residents was by a reduction in the fees for 1 year. And so nobody got a check, Myron.
No, through the association.
Not through the association. It came in a reduction of fees. So instead of paying, say, $29 a month, you were only paying $19, I'm making up numbers, for 1 year. Almost $1 million was returned to the residents in that fashion. There were no checks, please.
I didn't say.
Okay, you did. Okay.
That's okay.
The other thing is, Ed, there are some other issues here on the table. The numbers that are shown for 2014 for transportation contract are not complete. It's only representing 11 months because the 12th month does not get invoiced until the middle of January 2015, and the expense gets put back in. There's some accounting entry, not an accountant. So he only has 11 months expense in there for 2014, the paper you're looking at. That's why it looks like he has raised it. The contract has a built-in increase every single year. I believe it's 3%. And that number is figured out, I did it myself, almost to the penny, because you know exactly what it's going to be. What you don't know, of course, is the cost of fuel. Fuel I would always budget it high, because if you're going to tell me in July of 2014, you know how much you're going to pay for gas for your car in August or September, October of 15, I say great. But you never know. And the price was going up and up and up last year and the year before. We don't really know. I'm not comfortable personally to know that this $2.10 a gallon, how long is that going to be held? I would not budget fuel by today's price for all of next year, because who knows what's going to happen in November?
Good point, but a quick counter. Okay, what we're getting, obviously, is cash figures from Howard, correct?
That's what I would think,
Okay,
yes.
so therefore, in January of 2014, the payment that was due for December 31st, 2013 is in his figure. Therefore, the cash is really 12 months.
I don't think so, because it's far too little. It's around $200,000 off, as I recall,
No, it's not
to
that.
the budget. Yeah, it should be.
Well, I'll look at it. But I'm
Okay.
saying, I
No.
agree, what we're working with is a cash basis, not an accrual basis.
I don't think that's what he did, because I know that the number for transportation contract, as well as cable and security, should be almost spot on to what they actually were.
Should be is a good question.
Well, the others are. The
Well-
others are. They should be exactly right. You know today what the increase is going to be. And you know what the contract started at, and they tell you 5% a year for cable. It's very easy. I think the cable to budget to actual came out $1 wrong and over $2 million for rounding. Let's go where they belong. They belong with the laundry. They belong with the few dollars Barbara pointed out should not be included for fuel for security. There are plenty of places to pick, but you gotta pick the right place or you're gonna come off not looking so great. And he's gonna say, we don't know what we're talking about.
Amen.
He may say that no matter what, but your point.
They made some kind of comment. I sent an email to David, and I explained to him what I was doing there, and I asked him to immediately retract the comments that he put on his blog. He sent me an email of apology and took it right off. The beginning of the week, I was getting the IFI. All of a sudden, I'm not getting the IFI, which is the Information Forward Initiative. I sent him an email. I said, as president of my building, I think I'm entitled to get your IFI so I could afford, I could let my board and other people know what's going on. To which I got an email back that because of my wife and her attitudes toward him, he took me off of his IFI initiative. I went to Marcia Zaccardi, who's the vice president in charge of Wellington, and I asked Marcia, what can we do about it? And Marcia told me, he took me off also. Now, the point is, I've had other people send me the IFI. So what did he gain by his fit of power? What I want to get to is that there's an election coming up. And I think it behooves everybody to speak to their delegates, representatives, board members who are going to do the election and get the right people onto the executive board. Change has to come. As my wife puts it in her blog, no fourth term. I know it's a year we have a year away, but you've got to start thinking now about no fourth term. And I'm also going to say one more thing. When George Lowenstein was president, he always referred to the delegate assembly as the board, his board of directors. And that's how he governed UCO. And I think it should be followed.
You're absolutely right, Jerry. And just that you don't feel alone, I gave my email 3 times in private to David Israel. If some of you recall at a private meeting, and we're getting off topic, I said something about not having my email. Where's your email address? I wrote it out. I gave it to George Franklin. George Franklin walked up and handed it to David Israel, and he said, I'll take care of it. I get the same emails that you do. This is just the mentality, and we have to stop it. Let's stay on what we could do to change. I think it's a great idea to get as many people on as possible, but the immediate problem here is not to let this budget go through without bringing it down to a realistic level. You're next. You have a mic? Introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is. Yes, my name is Lee Sanchez, Chatham H. The last few comments are interesting, but let's talk about an action plan. We keep on talking, vote down the budget, vote the budget down. Okay, what's behind that vote? Let's have an action plan where things will happen at the next UCO meeting in February, because time is wasting. So we need an action plan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and have people make motions, second, and let's have votes. So let's go forward, but let's have an action plan, which I don't think I've seen.
Well, I'll let Olga answer that. What we have here, I don't want to answer it until Olga goes, an alternative budget.
You know what they say? They say 2 heads are better than 1. 3 heads are better than 1, okay? We have Ed, we have George, and we have Dorothy, who are experienced with numbers. And if we find a way to force David Israel to allow them to look at the books and determine what the budget should be, that could be a plan of action. But we have to force David to do it. And the only way to force him is to get up at the delegate assembly and say, this is what we, the delegates, want.
You have to make a motion.
We can make a motion.
Okay, let's talk right here, right now, who's going to make what motion, okay? That's the action plan.
Well, I'll say this. I'm not going to make the motion. I made it 3 times. It was seconded, and he said, you can come in.
About 2 meetings ago, somebody did announce it, and they said it's too much money for getting a professional. And you and they all said they will volunteer their services. They will volunteer their services. And what happened? And I didn't.
He accepted it.
Jerry, he didn't let us make the motion. He accepted it on Friday. And when I went to the office on Monday to talk to Howard, he said, I know nothing about it. You have to talk to David. I have a voicemail on my phone that says, you can't come in. I think it's a good action. Someone get up and make a motion again. Have the motion seconded and see what the vote will be.
Well, I want to know that if we vote for it, for a professional, an outsider, or you, the 2 other people, go in there, what can he do to stop it? What can we do after stopping it?
He says no.
In other words, what's the legal basis for challenge?
I go to all the meetings, I'm delicate, and I know exactly what he said.
Sandy, did you want to talk?
Yeah, Ed.
Stand up, Sandy.
Ed, you got a delegate meeting on the 6th of February.
Correct.
Correct? Why don't you go down and we pick it before the 6th on both the Haverhill and the Okeechobee with signs that said, delegates, stand up and do your job on the 6th.
That's very good. I mentioned it earlier, but we didn't have...
We did it for security. Why don't we stand up? You know, if you don't do it yourself, nobody will.
Well, it's a good suggestion. When that was made by Dot Lowenstein, I said, who's going to come? We had about 30 hands. We had about 6 people. Honey Sager.
I want to say something.
Honey is going to read. We didn't know she could, but okay.
My concern is that we have a certain amount of people here. However, there were many more people that read the Reporter. And the first page of the Reporter, where it has the budget, it shows a net decrease per month to the residents of $2.40 compared to the 2014 budget. inside on the Finance Committee Town Hall budget meeting, he also says, exactly here, this was quoting Howard, he revised the budget. He said there was a reduction amounting to $2.40 per month from compared to the 2014 budget. So this new budget is distributed and was on the large screen. Now my concern is that people are going to look at this and say, oh, we're paying less, $2.40 less for 2015 than we did for 2014, so let's pass the budget.
The answer is,
That's what you have to explain to people, that there are things within the budget there that probably could have reduced it by much more.
That's really not the answer. The answer is, well, I understand, and it also says a lot of other things. The thing is, the budget should be compared to the actual, not to the budget. Now, those of you who may have worked for government works on a budget. And what happens is it is to their detriment lots of times. Let's say the newspaper has a budget. And if they don't spend their budget within a month before the end of the year, they'll find expenses. That's the way a government works. We're supposed to be self-managed. Now, another thing about the newspaper, and we have one of the newspaper people here who's very important. She gets a tremendous amount of ads. I didn't take a look, but the newspaper usually makes money. Now, even though it makes money, could it make more money? And is that money reducing what we're paying? I only have one observation. My building, which gets the newspaper every month, I'd say we throw out 40% of the papers delivered. I've talked to other presidents, it comes out to the same thing. Now, we pay for printing. Aren't we printing too many copies? How much does it cost for printing? Now, the printing, I believe, has been given to the same printer for a long time. Hold it. When did you change the printer?
Last year.
How long? Second year. So you did do that. Good. You got a better price.
Yes.
Good. Have you ever checked the amount of issues that get discarded? No. Because the only way you could check it is talk to the various presidents. How many people here are delegates of presidents? How many people find that they're throwing out a good percentage of what's being delivered?
50%. At least. I agree. I didn't get mine.
Especially in summer.
Excuse me, Ed, the newspapers are stacked up outside the Camden Pool when they're delivered. After they're delivered, it's got to be 1,000 minimum papers left after all of the, maybe more, maybe 1,500 laying there, and they lay there for 10 days and then they throw them away.
How many do they order? How many?
We don't know that number. Just a second. Marilyn wants to say something.
We just ordered last month 10,000. 10,000 papers. And they are distributed to all the buildings. Any of the management companies have given out a list of how many people are in each of the buildings, and that's what they go by. So if there's 20 apartments, then they're getting 20. Right, but how do they order 10,000 when there's only 7,800? Because
Wait a second. Go ahead.
Keeps on getting papers. The Hastings gets papers. It goes out to different places outside in the area. That's where the papers are going.
Maryland.
And what happens is, and what they've tried to do, and since I was affiliated with the newspaper, on the advertising end, we have tried to tell people, the associations or the the advertisers not to put coupons in, because once there are coupons in the paper, then what is happening? People are coming to the clubhouse, they are grabbing 2, 3, 4, 5 papers, clipping coupons, and then that's why there are so many papers gone, because the clubhouse keeps on coming to the reporter to please give us more papers. Hastings, the same thing.
Marilyn, you saw there was a pile of newspapers this time outside the clubhouse that you discarded.
Just a minute, the papers just came in yesterday.
No, I'm talking about the last one. The last one, they were laying there for 2, 3 weeks after they came, and then you had to discard them.
All right, just a second. Just a second.
More important things than the newspapers.
I would just say that it would be interesting if you took a survey of the 309 units, associations, how many papers are being discarded. We have a sampling here, and they're saying 30 to 50%. The fact that you have 42 units doesn't mean you're using 42 papers. Now, having your policy, by the way, is a nice policy. You're saying the papers are being discarded. If I was an advertiser, I would want to put a coupon in. How do I know that my advertising is paying off? You don't have a registered circulation. You're made up of a list. You should be able to show a potential advertiser that you're getting a bang for the buck. So while you feel these papers are being discarded, the advertisers can agree. I don't want to continue on this. I'd like to go to another place.
There's some very important thing, because people are leaving. This budget is supposed to last for 15 months. Of course, one of the months has already gone by. This budget's supposed to go to March 31st, 2016.
But it's not supposed to start until April 1st, 2015.
In 2016, but we're only talking about the budget we're looking at right this moment.
Doesn't it start April 1st?
No, that budget is supposed to be from January 1 of 14 to March 31 of 2016. 15 months. So, yes.
Extend the 2014 until April 1st?
The point is, where's the money coming from, honey? Where is it coming from?
They're still paying the amounts.
Well, then the amounts of money calculated for contracts are wrong. Because on the first of the year of 16, they will increase again. You have your 5% now. Let's just talk about cable. I think it's the easiest one to understand. If you have a 5% increase that was being paid in January, February, and March, but you paid last year's money in, where's the extra 5% coming from? It's coming from the money that was in the bank, depleting the bank balance. Okay? Now you're going to pay, I don't know what he calculated it on, but if he calculated it on 2015 rates, you'll have the same thing the first 3 months of the following year. Therefore, I believe, and this was pointed out to me, and I thank the person who apparently wanted to remain anonymous, for calling this to my attention, because it did not occur to me. This will affect your transportation contract likewise, first of the year increase. I assume the security contract was written in the same manner. First of the year, an increase. Therefore, you're paying 9 months at one rate and 3 months at a somewhat higher rate. So if you're going to pay, you'll always be falling behind. And therefore, I think maybe from that premise alone, we could have a way to definitely just turn the whole thing down. It needs to all be recalculated, and the rates need to be shown what was used as the basis for this calculation.
I think it's a point well taken, Dorothy. Well taken, and I think what happened is, when Howard tried to put through a blended rate for the first 3 months, which was illegal and we turned it down. Those people who have listened to us only paid 2014. This whole movement to the April 1st was a fiasco and ill plan. I agree with you. Anything that can get this budget turned down should get it turned down.
So what are we gonna do now, between now and the next meeting, to enact all this conversation? What
I
are
have
we
a
gonna do to
suggestion.
actually enact?
Can I make a comment for a while?
Who's talking?
Stand up.
Stand up
Stand up, okay.
and introduce yourself.
Myron Fairtag, Windsor Age. It's fine and good what you're saying. We're here, 10 more meetings and find fault with the budget, which, you know, there's a lot of things to find fault with. So, action plan, whatever you want to call it. We have the experts, and yourself, George, and Dorothy, whoever else there might be. You have to come up, I believe, with an alternate budget so the delegates can compare some, you know, what you're saying. Just knocking the other budget, some of these people can't handle that. They, you know, you think you're picking on Israel or, you know, the mob, whatever. And so the credibility there is not there, I don't think. If you have an actual, factual budget, your budget, that you think is reasonable, present that, and I think the delegates at that point would have something to base their decision on. Not just a personal, you know, kind of
It's a good observation. We're working on it now. The items are not comparable. You have to recast it, go an item at a time. And we're working in the dark because we can't get the information.
Well, Dorothy has a pretty good idea, I think, right?
Well, but the answer is, things change, contracts change, assumptions change. So the answer is, all you can do is compare the best you know on the facts you have.
Okay, I agree.
Now, if you turn the budget, we're not going to get to vote on it until March. Okay? I think a plan of action, which was brought up before, was a motion, seconded, and voted on to get those people, anybody else who thinks they're qualified, in to look at the records. Failing that,
Bravo.
failing that, we could all request, everybody, the right to go in and inspect the books on 6/17. Now, if they get 30 requests, they're going to have a hard time turning it down. And it's a simple form. Anybody who doesn't know the form, come write it on. Who wants to send it in, write it in the front there. We'll prepare the form. You sign. And that's the way to go.
Could I also make an observation? I see in his budget for this year, on the revenue side, there's two areas that aren't showing any revenue, which is allocations and investigations.
Investigations I covered. You're missing 86,000 in income. And the way to prepare a budget is forget the allocations. Compare it item by item so you could see it. Allocations, I could allocate anything, including Bloomingdale bills for George. So that is the plan. You want a plan, someone has to get up, make a motion to recall the same item that 50 of you signed for us to go in. If it gets voted down, doesn't mean you stop. Then each and every one of you can send a letter in to examine the records. And that's what we have to do. And you have until March.
I'm not familiar with here, but I know where I come from. The auditors are normally not approved by the board of directors, but by the population. Like
I
by the
brought
residents.
that up, if you were listening, that in the real world, first of all, I don't know if there's 3 competitive bids to do the audit. And second of all, the changing of an accounting method that was in place should be voted on by the delegates. And a lot of you know that you didn't understand what you got, but you understood it before. There is nothing in, according to Howard, to stop them, but there's nothing in it that says he can't do, he shouldn't do it, except sunshine. Bring it into the sunshine. You're next, Olga.
I just want to condense everything. If we continue to turn the budget down, we could let David Israel know that unless he allows our three people, our three experts, to review the budget and make changes, and make recommendations, okay, for change, which of course Howard has to agree to too, since he's the treasurer. Okay, it's only fair that nothing is going to happen and he's going to be at a standstill. This, letting him know that we're going to continuously turn down his budget is going to force him to do what the delegates want, not what he wants to do.
Did you make a bracha?
I want to make sure, that there is no confusion between what was originally volunteered, which is to do a forensic audit, which David addressed and said no to, and what we're volunteering for now has nothing to do with the forensic audit.
That's absolutely true.
Okay, and I think that distinction has to be made, because I'm sure he's going to bring up the word forensic again, and so be alert to that. And this is a completely separate issue with helping him make up the budget. Nothing to do with a forensic audit. Okay?
You're absolutely right, and I think they've gotten it. Gary has posted it on the blog. I don't want to keep this beyond the...
I want to say before you close, I got something I want to bring up. This has nothing to do with the budget, basically, but you people who have been living here, this is important, for a few years. If you remember when they started talking about paving the roads, and Mr. Israel, Mr. Black, and Roger Carver pummeled the residents to pass the paving, we have to pay double. This is what they do all the time, frighten the residents into doing things that shouldn't be done. Just bear that in mind.
All of you here who want to send your own request, please write your name down at the desk. And that way it's just not me, Myron, or somebody. There's other people who are requesting to see the records.
Join the mob.
Didn't we do that on the letters you sent? Didn't we all sign the letter?
I sent it in, and you saw his answer on the blog. UCO will not deal with threats. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure there's been a motion to adjourn. I want to thank Neil. I want to thank you all for coming. Be well, and we will have another meeting right after the...
Thank you.
You're welcome. The delegate meeting.
Thank you.